Hello everyone, welcome to the video on mixing our track. Before we go into any sort of mixing, there's something I want to do, and I mentioned about using the Century Brass by 8DO, and I think because I think the horns have a really unique sound about them. They're quite harsh, and I think that would work really well. So I'm just going to add them real quick. So it's just there to remind myself that I want to add it. Right, so because I've loaded a template, I've always got some EQs set up. So I'm just going to walk you through the EQ that I have. I'm not going to do any micromanagement in the strings and brass because I've already bounced out an audio file and I was relatively happy with the way they were mixed. So I think I'm just going to mix those particular audio files into what we've already got. So you'll notice that with the violins that I've got a massive dip in the bottom. That's just the low cut filter because we don't really need any low frequencies coming out for them. Here in the about 3000 kilohertz range, I've got a slight dip at about minus 3.5, and that's literally just to add a little bit more airiness into the violins because we want them to sound quite light, but not too light that they sound really thin. And I've got a slight bump up here, high shelf frequency has been boosted a bit. Again, that's just to emphasize the lightness of it. Cinematic Studio Strings is quite a dark sounding string library, so naturally these feel like quite good choices to make with EQ. Let's just have a listen to what they sound like with and without EQ, so we can do like a compare and contrast sort of thing, just so you know what we're listening out for here. So by me moving these, you probably won't notice too much difference in it, but it does make a big difference in the grand scheme of things with the mix as a whole. And with the lower strings, we've got it's a similar sort of shape, but in the low end, we're not cutting so much off. And if you remember in an earlier video we did, I cut down this frequency a little bit on the basses. That's simply because the frequency of a particular note was really bothering me quite a bit. It was quite resonant within the mix. But you just have to be careful not to drag it down too much because otherwise it can affect the rest of the sound on different notes of the bass. In the short strings, I'm just cutting out a little bit of the body. And again, we're putting a dip in the low end, so we're cutting most of that out. But if you notice, I haven't pushed the high end up at all. And this is simply because the libraries I'm using. So we're using fluid shorts and the 8DO ostinato strings on top of CSS. And fluid shorts and ostinato strings have quite a harsh attack to them already. So by pushing the high end up would probably make it sound a little bit too aggressive. Hollywood strings, on the other hand, could do with like a little bit of pushing. So I have put the high end up a little bit on that. Again, it's similar. I've cut a little bit more of the low end out, and that's because the Hollywood series, and that goes for the brass as well, tend to have quite a lot of low end noise. So if I just remove this cutout for you, you'll see what I mean when it plays. And then we've got OTT, and it's the same preset for all the strings, all the short strings. And it's there just to add a little bit more airiness. It's just to bolster the whole effect, essentially. And remember, it's essential not to push the depth up too much because it will wreck the sound quite a bit. Right, so let's try and mix these strings together, the short strings and the long strings audio file. I'll probably just cut a little bit low mid frequencies in the strings out a bit. I want to save that for the brass if I can.